Good morning and welcome to JBW Designs. I'm Judy Whitman. I had to think about that. And I'm so grateful for you watching the videos. We got some very interesting questions last week, and I'm hoping to help you with some of those. And also, I want to share some other Christmas models with you. So I love hearing about your comments and your questions. And if you have requests for certain topics going forward, I'd love to hear about those too. So today I tried to set up another view of my office. So you can kind of see behind me, I have a nice collection of red and white samplers back there, a couch in case you need to take a nap, and my books, a nice collection of books that I've gotten over the years that I use, of course, in a lot of the designs, especially the alphabets and the motifs. So then back over here where the closet doors are, that's my packing closet. And in there, there's tapes and envelopes and all kinds of things to pack orders. The office isn't always this organized. I will admit that when I set up the videos, I do try to clean up some of the piles that are on the floor. So it's always not this neat and tidy. So today, so let me backtrack. Last week, I showed you the new design, the Christmas in the Round models. And one of the questions we got is, how do you finish those? So that is going to be my main focus today at the end of the video. But first, I wanted to tell you about an idea that I had, and this was kind of a funny mistake that I made. So I had said last week I'm going to give a prize, and the prize is going to be a snowflake. And I thought I'd ordered them, and then when it came in, it turns out I hadn't ordered the snowflake, I had actually ordered this disc. So then I was frantically trying to look for the larger snowflake model. And in the process of doing that, I came across a little one. And then I had an idea of another design that I have that would really look cute on this snowflake. So I thought, oh, that'll be the first thing I share today. So this is called French Country Snowflake. This one is worked over 2, and so that would fit on the bigger star. And then what would look really cute is working the model over 1 and mounting it on the little star. I thought, oh, that would be precious. So that's another finishing idea and another design to share with you. So this week, I pulled out a model that I have had. It's actually a set of models that I've had for a long time. I forgot to pull out the books to show them to you. But I have a couple of things, a couple of designs that are 4-part. So in other words, there are 4 books to complete the design. And one of them is Twas the Night, which I want to show you today. I also have a Christmas Village, which I'll show you another week. And then last year I designed the 12 Days of Christmas. And I love the finishing on that one. I'll show you that one week also. So today we're going to start with, I'm going to show you the ornaments first. So the 12 Days of Christmas is really 3 books in each collection. So the first one is Twas the Night, the stockings were hung, and the children were nestled. Years ago, I had someone write to me and say, did you do every line of the poem? And I said, no, it would be much too hard to do. So these are just finished as little square individual ornaments, and so you could work the design individually. So then the second set is Away to the Window. This one is actually missing a little charm here. A miniature sleigh with 8 tiny reindeer. And then the next one is It Must Be St. Nick. So that's book number 2. And then book number 3 has With a Sleigh Full of Toys. In a twinkling I heard on the roof. And down the chimney St. Nicholas came. So that's the third set. And then the fourth set is His Eyes How They Twinkled. He filled all the stockings, and I see that this has run here. I'm not sure what happened. It must have gotten wet. And then the last one is Happy Christmas to All. So those are the 12, could be separate ornaments. However, you might think about, I'm going to back up here a little bit, doing it as a single piece, which I don't know when I came up with this idea, but I love it in this format. So I've worked all 12 ornaments on one piece, and I've surrounded it with a border. And it's real easy, once you purchase the booklets, to get the PDF file to go with this pattern. So it's 2 separate pages. It shows the layout, shows the chart for the border, and then there's a color picture of what it looks like when it's finished. And this is free. It's a PDF file, so you just email me, Judy@JBW Designs, and I'd be happy to send you the file that goes with that design. So moving on. The thing that I wanted to focus on today is finishing and how to finish. Several people asked, how do you finish this? And they also, of course, this was another model of the Christmas in the Round, and more importantly, how did you finish this one? And they're all basically the same steps. So first of all, I'm going to preface this by saying I am not a professional finisher. I do it now and then, and I actually did finish those myself, but I'd much prefer to send my models to a professional, and I have several. I've had 2 or 3 over the years. Their work is exquisite. I just love what they do. They often come up with things that I would never think of, which I love. And we usually talk over it beforehand, what kind of trims we want and how we want it finished, etc. But today I'm going to walk you through all of the finishing for these pieces. So first of all, you're going to, and this is going to be kind of a funny demonstration because I don't have a camera so you can look down and see me finishing. So I'm going to hold things up and hope that you get all the steps. So the first thing is I get out all the supplies I need. And you're going to want to start with, of course, a ruler, a pencil. I use a compass because these particular designs are circular, so I'll show you how to do that. I use a board for mounting, and I learned this from one of my finishers. It is called comic board. And the beauty of it is not as thick as mat board, so it's easier to cut with the scissors. And if you're wondering where to buy it, you actually can go to a comic book store. They sell it because they use it to store comic books, keep them fresh. I know of quilters who use this to store fabrics. You can also order it online. So it's just a great backing for the piece that you're working on. You're also going to need fabric glue, and I use this Alene fabric glue that I get at any of the craft stores. Let's see what else you're going to need. Oh, I always lay out an old towel and a washcloth because when you're gluing this, your hands get real sticky and you need to clean things up. You're going to need scissors. You're going to need scissors to cut cardboard and scissors to cut fabric. The other thing that I use, let's see where it is here on my desk. I use just a little stick like this when I'm applying the glue on the back of the piece. And when I'm attaching the cardboard, I just used old-fashioned toothpicks. You're also going to need some felt. And I use this instead of backing. Instead of batting. I think it's easier to work with, and you can get different thicknesses of felt. This one's kind of thin, but that's what you're going to use on the first board that you're going to cover. And I'll show you the steps here, but I use felt to give it a little raised surface. You can use a couple layers of felt. And they also make a felt that has a sticky back. So that's real easy then to cut and apply to the cardboard. You're going to need some backing fabric for your piece. Let's see what else is on the list. To make the cording, and I'll talk about that in a little while, I use this little cording drill from Krynek, and I'll tell you about where to get directions for that. And then, excuse me, ribbon that I usually tie at the base. So here are the steps for finishing. First of all, you're going to need to measure the width of your piece And you want to I allowed about 1/4 inch past the design to determine the width of my circle, or the circumference rather. So if this was 5 inches, I would cut a circle 5 inches around. This one is a tiny one to show you. And I need to cut 2 out of my comic board. So one is going to be for the design, the other is going to be for the backing. And so the next step is I also cut a piece of felt that is going to go on this board, and I just glue it down because this is what my design is going to go over. And I pulled out a model that I had stitched. I'm not sure what was wrong with it, but it's perfect because it's circular, so I can use it for a demonstration. So you can see that your design is going to go over these 2 layers of the board and the felt. I told you it was going to be a little tricky in midair here. You need to take another measurement before you cut your fabric to make sure that you leave enough of a margin beyond the cardboard for your border that is going to be glued to the back of your piece. And once you determine that size, you're going to cut a piece of your backing fabric that same size, because you're covering one board with backing and one board with your design. Now, another little hint for you is that a lot of times people put an iron-on interfacing on the back of their work because it gives it a little more body, and it also gives it more of a backing so it's not so clear. So then, I hope this is making sense. So then you're going to go on, and once you've glued your felt to your board, then you're going to glue your design to this, wrapping it to the back. And I did a quick little one this morning to show you what it's going to look like. So I cut out a piece of cardboard, I put the felt, I found just an old piece I'd worked on, and then I ran a bead of glue around the outside edge. Now some people with circular pieces, especially larger ones, will run a little basting around that edge to pull it in. Oh, I hope that didn't stop completely. And so you could do that. You put basting around the edge and then draw it up, and then so now you've got your first layer done. You've got your design on your backing and it's glued on. You're going to do the same with this backing. So I've used my fabric. I'm going to glue that to the back. And then the next step is, and I'm going to show you with a different piece because I had 2 that I had in my stash here. Here is a triangular piece, so that's been glued to the back. Here's the fabric that's been glued to the other. Now you need to put those 2 pieces together. You can glue them together, but I prefer hand basting them because I think it has a tighter edge when you do that. A couple of these models actually don't need a backing. This, since it's going on a wooden board, you can just glue to the backing after you've finished that first step. And with the Joy here, I put a backing on only because I wanted it to look nice if I approached it from the opposite side. And then on this one, the little snowflake, you should put a backing. I did not, and I ended up putting a piece of felt on the back because I realized I should have put a backing on this one. You can kind of see it through the edges there. So I've kind of described the first couple steps. You've covered your design over your board, you've glued it, and now you've got a nice clean edge. And so you're going to glue that to your board. So you either glue it to this one, or several of you are interested in gluing it to this, the Joy. And actually, I didn't think it would work, but it did. It's fabric glue, but I just ran a bead of glue around the top edge of that O, and then affixed this to the top of it, and then weight it down with a book or something for it to dry. So then your last final step is making the cording to go around the edge. And I'm not going to demonstrate that today because it really needs to be done from afar, but I'm going to tell you that if you Google Krynek, I think it's custom cording tool, you can find all kinds of demonstrations of how to make cording with floss. And the beauty of it is you can make it any thickness, you can make it any length. I will tell you I start with 3 times the length of the circumference when I'm starting, and I experiment with how many ply floss to use, because the more you use, the thicker it's going to get. So then your last step is going to be gluing that cording around the edge of your design. And that's when I use the little toothpick, because you want just a little tiny edge of glue. And then one last step. So when you make cording, there's always a little end here that's twisted, and it doesn't have to be knotted because it's actually the midpoint of the cording. The other end you have to knot in order to keep that cording tight. So I would, and actually one of my finishers did this, she cut off that knot and she put a tiny little piece of Scotch tape there so that it was flatter. So when you're doing your cording, I usually start at the base and I glue it around here. You want to leave a tiny opening down here when you've glued this to here so that you can poke one end of the cording in here, glue it around the whole edge, and then poke the other end in. And then the ribbon is always used because it ties that joining. Sometimes it's not as neat and tidy as you'd like it to look. So I'm hoping that helps you with how to finish these designs. And if not, I want you to write to me and tell me what you need to know. So let's see, we had 2 winners last week. Actually, I thought it'd be fun to give away 2 things. So I purchased a couple of these, so I'm going to give one of the wreaths away and one of the wooden snowflakes away. And the winners can decide which one they want. I have some extras. So Gloria Hanaway and Sandra Ketchum are winners this week. Congratulations. I want you to support your local shops and write to me if you have questions, and subscribe if you're interested in seeing future videos. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.